Hi, everyone. We'll start in just a few minutes. Okay, I think we can get started. Welcome, everybody. Glad you're here. This is the fifth in a series of, let me make sure I'm sharing my screen. Yes, good. Okay, this is the fifth in a series of 6 webinars. We're focusing on modernization, both in open systems and in mainframe environments. Today, we're going to do some introductions, a little bit of housekeeping. I'll talk a little bit about the company, although it's getting shorter and shorter as these webinars progress, because I assume that you've all seen one or more of the previous webinars. We're going to look at slides and have 3 different demonstrations, and then we'll have some question and answers. So there's no need to take notes. You'll get a recording of this webinar. If you have a problem, raise your hand or write your questions and comments in the chat anytime during the presentation. One of us will be watching for those and answering them if we can. Don't forget to get the handouts. There is a copy of the slides. There's a white sheet from IBM on the zOS, and there is a links page. We'll be talking about different links during the presentation, and you could just download that and have all the links available. Your presenters today are myself, Marilyn Prince. I'm a solutions architect at Veryant. I was previously with AccuCorp, and I was also a programmer for many years. And Bernard Zizerman, the Enterprise Business Development Director of Veryant. He was previously the founder of the legacy modernization company Telebig. So a little bit about Veryant. We like to say Veryant is COBOL. It was founded in 2005. We had our first mainframe migration in 2008 in Italy with up to 20,000 concurrent users. Our main offices are in the US and Italy with direct distributors all over the world. We want to help our customers innovate faster with lower risk. isCOBOL's unique implementation lets you use new technologies without rewriting or retiring your COBOL applications. We want you to keep the strengths of COBOL, that mature business logic, and integrate it with the strengths of Java and other languages. And then we want to give you a simple and complete way to take the application and put it on the environment best suited to your business, be it the cloud, the mainframe, or distributed systems. We think this is the best way to get the most value from your IT investments, to keep the irreplaceable business logic, add new technology, and end up with a cutting-edge, cost-effective solution. The isCOBOL compiler compiles your COBOL to Java classes transparently. It's still COBOL as far as the COBOL developer is concerned. Veryant takes care of the Java seamlessly and invisibly. isCOBOL compiles in 2 stages, COBOL to Java code, and then Java code to a Java class. And we have a framework that is used by the Java runtime to run the program. This means that you develop in COBOL, maintain in COBOL, debug in COBOL, but you run in Java. A little bit about our products. Our software development kit, SDK, includes the COBOL compiler, a full-service graphical debugger, an IDE based on the familiar Eclipse environment, a full complement of utilities and tools, as well as a SQL engine embedded in the compiler to precompile your esQL. For deployment, we have a runtime framework, which is a set of Java jar files that is needed by the Java runtime to run the compiled classes. A set of servers, including an application server to run in the client server or distributed environment. This uses multi-threaded processing to keep your files stable and for high performance. And for a very large number of users, we have a load balancer to balance the processing over several servers. The Extend Internet System, or EIS, is a group of products for web enablement. WebDirect 2 to map COBOL UI to JavaScript UI, Web Services for SOAP and REST, and the Web Client to run your desktop application from a browser without changing your code. The EIS is a development system add-on, which means that the cost is a one-time cost on the development suite side, not the implementation or runtime side. For data, isCOBOL includes several data storage options, both ISAM and relational database management systems. The database bridge generates a bridge program to convert your COBOL standard file I/O statements to embedded SQL statements, so you can access any relational database without changing your code. There is also a development add-on where the code, this is also a development add-on where the code is pre-generated and written into the Java code to be compiled. This means improved performance over similar products that generate the esQL bridge code on the fly at runtime. Ours is generated beforehand. isCOBOL UDBC gives a relational database type SQL access to your COBOL data files. And I always like to stress that isCOBOL's finest product is the technical support department with decades of experience and an organizational structure that gives us the ability to provide every customer personalized service. So let's talk about COBOL on the mainframe. On the IBM Z mainframe, isCOBOL is already available in some of the areas through the mainframe's Linux capabilities. The first is Linux One. It's a dedicated infrastructure which runs Linux only. It's aimed at high performance, high security, and is mostly for hybrid cloud deployment. Linux Z runs on the same infrastructure as the zOS, the IBM Z. It usually runs on a special dedicated processor, the IFL. Now, isCOBOL, as I said, can already run in both of these Linux environments because Java can run in both of them. The zOS is the major operating system running on the IBM Z, and that's the new environment for isCOBOL that we want to talk about today. The purpose of this presentation is to show you why you would use isCOBOL and to preview some of the features of the upcoming isCOBOL for zOS. So before I go on, I want to open up a poll. The question is, are you developing web applications for the mainframe, on the mainframe? And so just if you can, click on yes or no. I'm interested to see the response here. We have quite a lot of talk about this lately. And I'm just wondering if it's just talk or if it's really happening. Okay, I'll give it a little bit more time. Okay, looks like some people are. Very good. And for the most not. So perhaps we're struggling to update or it just isn't needed. Okay, so I'm going to close. And I'll share the results with you. It's pretty evenly, 30-70. Okay, so let me expand here a little bit. Sorry about that. Hide that. And I want to reiterate this next point. How can isCOBOL run on a zOS? Well, Java, currently only IBM Enterprise COBOL can run on a zOS. Okay. However, Java can run in the zOS Unix area. Now, this was previously called USS, or Unix System Services. And because isCOBOL compiles your Java code and creates a Java class, and Java runs on the zOS, your COBOL programs can run in that environment. Now, zOS Unix components access the same services as the traditional MVS applications, with a high degree of interoperability between the two operating systems. And IBM fully supports this Java under the zOS, and it even promotes it on the market in order to keep its current customers on the Z platform. And IBM also sees this as a way to attract new ones. Now, currently, zOS developers and users would definitely benefit from implementing some zOS Unix usage, either using the straightforward COBOL to Java integration and getting mainframe cost optimization with zip, which we're going to discuss a little bit later. But there are other groups that would benefit from this Unix on zOS. Another group is that would benefit from the isCOBOL for zOS are current mainframe ISVs. They can decrease the TCO of their packages by using the zip for their existing and new COBOL applications. Consulting companies that specialize in mainframe capacity management or cost optimization services, they can help their clients leverage these Veryant benefits. Non-mainframe ISVs can now run their software packages on the zOS by running them in the zOS Unix environment. And of course, global systems integrators can provide pretty diverse new services around this zOS for isCOBOL for zOS with that mixed COBOL Java. Really, each of these groups can benefit from using isCOBOL's COBOL to Java capabilities to keep their important COBOL business logic and integrating it with Java developed applications. And also, the IDE and debugging capabilities are included with the development system at no extra cost. So that's going to give you some cost savings on the development side. I'm going to pass the control to Bernard to show you how isCOBOL for zOS works. Bernard?
Yes, hello. Hello, everyone.
Oh.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, maybe good night, or one of them. So, you give me the control? Marlene?
Yep. Hang on.
Yeah, okay.
Get to the right place. Here we go.
Yes. So, okay, here we are. Everybody sees my screen?
Not yet. There we go. Yes.
So. Okay. So, I'm talking to mainframers. There are many of them today. The idea of this very first demonstration, elementary demonstration, is to show that you can use isCOBOL for zOS exactly the same way as you use Enterprise COBOL for zOS, which is the only COBOL available on the environment. So I will start with a very simple things, which is under ISPF, so the standard development environment, very old-fashioned. A lot of people like it because they have always lived with it. And I will go to the simplest possible demonstration, which is a COBOL program, Hello World. So I have my PDS here, and I'll go down to the place where I put the COBOL programs. And I have this very simple Hello program, which, oh, member in use, I'm sorry. I should have checked that before. I have another environment, we'll see that later. And I forgot to close. These type of things can happen always. Okay. So it proves that these two environments are looking each, which is normal. This is the simple program. So this program just make display. Okay. So I am going now to compile this program. In order to compile it, I have to find the JCL, which is here, sample JCL. And I will first compile it under zOS. So this is my JCL, very simple, very traditional. I'm using the procedure to compile and link and on a member of a PDS, and then I execute this member. So I submit the JCL, and I will look under SDSF to the result of the execution. Okay, there is no error, max CC equals 0, and these are the various sysout components. The first one is the COBOL compilation with the source and whatsoever. And I will not give you the instance to go into details. And the execution itself is this message. Okay. Now we are going to do the same exactly with isCOBOL for zOS. So I use, of course, the same source program, and I go again to the JCL library. And I have this simple JCL ILO, which is a different, it looks bigger. In fact, it can be reduced by using Rex procedure. But what it does is exactly the same. You know, the first step is, or there is an additional step here, because everything will happen in the zOS environment, the zOS Unix environment of zOS. So first of all, I have to copy the source code to this Unix environment, and this is done by this TSO command, output. Then I have a compile command, and in this compile, I put the name of the class, which is the COBOL compiler. The COBOL compiler is a class itself, a Java class. You can put some parameters, and then I put the name. I can use wild characters and so on. The name of the source, which has been copied from the MVS environment to the Unix environment. And then I have a general shell script, which is always the same, which is required. This is just technical. We'll have a look later on. And then I have the step of the execution, which is the same. So I'm still under ISPF. I don't go to Unix at all. And I submit the JCL, and I look at the result. And the result is this one. So I have the copy step. Okay. I have the compile step. In fact, there are two sysout for that, two partial sysout. If there would be error, I would have some error, some indication, listing, and so on. And I have the execution. Oh, I'm sorry. And I have the execution step itself, the run step, which is running the JVM. So no error, and executing the program, and the result is the same. That's all for this little demonstration. So I think there is another poll now. Marilyn?
Yes, there is another poll.
Yes.
I'll open that up. Are you using the IDE for your mainframe development? An IDE, any IDE. It's just a yes or no. Doesn't matter what type. We have a great IDE, don't we, Bernard? I think you're going to show us that in a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's based on Eclipse, but I know you mentioned there was one called Zoe. Is that right? Zoe.
Yeah, Zoe is a different thing. Zoe is an open source project handled by several companies to provide subs. There are many areas where IBM and others are working, and we are also, of course,
Okay.
to enhance the environment.
All right, great. So we're just interested, do you use an IDE for your mainframe development? I'll leave it open for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Oh, I'm surprised by this number of yes.
Yeah, we have more yeses than you expected, huh?
Oh yes. Oh, it's good.
Okay. That's great. And that shows that COBOL is still an active, that's a more modern way to do things. So I'm glad that it's still valid, still going strong. Wow, look at that. Okay, I'm going to close this up now and share this. It's 50-50. So that's great.
That's surprising, but
yeah.
That's
okay.
the advantage in this type of pose.
All
I
right,
think I go for the second demo now. Huh?
Yes, back to you.
Okay, for this second demo, we will stay with this rather rebarbative, I would say, single Windows environment, because this is environment used by the big majority of mainframers. As we see from this poll, because the people here are maybe more modern than traditional mainframers, there is some evolution which goes, and we are very happy with that. However, our first objective is not to change the habit of the people. So everything that you can do under ISPF, TSO, SDSF, and so, with all the utilities, look at some, you can continue to do it with isCOBOL. So we are going to make something still very simple, but a little more interesting than Hello World. And I have a sample program, which is called Busy Mixed, which I'll show you. The source code, it's still very simple, but it does two things, this program. It accesses a sequential file, an input file, which is called cardin. And it's also access. It creates, connects, and populates a DB2 database. So the DB2 database is shared, like also the file, between the zOS MVS environment and the zOS Unix environment. And this is technically done by specific features of the operating system, of the both operating systems. So the program is essentially a loop, reading one record one by one and populating the database. So it starts with the input, and there is a loop, and there is some paragraph to connect to the database after it has been created, create table and so on. So the table is called person. Now we are just look at what is in the input file, which I never remember the name, is file cardin, not cardin. So let's found file cardin here. File cardin. So I use the editor for that. And I have just a number of this very rudimentary, the name, first name, company, and country. So, of course, to compile and execute this program, I need a GCL, and the GCL is here. The GCL is exactly the same thing. I copy the source program, I compile the source with the isCOBOL, and I execute it. The difference here, I put the file definition, the DCB of the sequential file. I execute, I submit, the GCL and I execute it same way. Here it is. Okay, I will not go at this one. Well, let's make sure there is no error, but I'm pretty sure no error. The run and the execution. The execution, you don't see much because in fact, you just only on the sysout, the displays that I put to follow up the execution of the program. So what I'm going to do now is use the standard and old-fashioned also utility to display, to access a DB2 database, which is, so I go to the master menu of ISPF, and the program is called SPUFI, SPUFI, that probably all mainframers know. And well, I will not go into the details. You give them a file where you have some SQL. It's mainframe. So I've prepared this file, which is here. So there is only one select. Yeah, I select everyone with country equal USA. So the way it works, you validate it, and you've got the execution, and you find out that on my list there are 2 persons in USA, Marilyn here, and Alfred Hitchcock. That's all. Let's now have a look on the other side, in the background side, in the Unix side. So I'm logged into Unix here. To simplify, I have put all components of the demonstration in one directory. Of course, it's better to organize it with source, object, listing, and so on, but it would be a little unuseful for this case. So I saw my CBL program, which are here. I saw some listing. I saw all the things that we have looked at. And I just want to show you 2 important components, which is comp env. You probably remember that during the JCL for compilation, there is an execution of a shell script, which is comp env. And comp env, without getting into much detail, is there to position all the required environment variable for the compiler. And also, you can add or change some parameters for the Java execution. And for those who know isCOBOL, you find here the classical options of compilation, such as the name of the place where you put the output file, where you put the listing file, some compilation. This one is very important. It allows, or it's forced to have IBM Enterprise COBOL compatibility. And of course, it terminates by the name of the source code, which is used. So this is always the same. The other one is Java env, which is based on the same model, Java env, to execute the class which has been generated by the compiler. So these are really the specific things, but you don't have to, you adjust them to your environment, and when they are set up, you don't change them. So that was the second demonstration, and I will switch immediately to the third demonstration. For this demonstration, I decided to change this environment. I'm personally a little bored with ISPF. So I go to something a little more modern. I'll go to a product which is very simple and very nice from IBM. And it's also free. I mean, free for zOS users. So spend some money. We'll see that later. And this environment is an Eclipse environment. It's not an IDE by itself. It's an environment which allows to transfer source or even object between the mainframe and I would say the mainframe's environment. If you look, I have two connections here, two mainframes. The first one is a Unix environment. If I go there, I'm sorry. I go to Bernard, and Bernard is a view of the same environment as the one I had from my Linux environment. This is the same. So, and the other one is the MVS environment. So here I found also the same component that I used under ISPF. So I'm going to make a demonstration to run a program. This program is a program that we use to validate access to vSAM file. Just a reminder, so you've seen in the second demonstration that we access sequential file or PDS, database, DB2, but we also access vSAM. And all these represent the major, except if you have specific database and so on, artifacts in terms of data access used by MVS. So all of these are just usable, normally usable, like Enterprise COBOL, from isCOBOL. For this one, I put it in a separate, in a different JCL and source. So it's called test COBOL. And no, it's the same. Hello, index. Let me look. No. I'm confusing myself. So this is the sample COBOL. This is here one. So yes. So test JC. The only problem you have with this editor, it does not display by alphabetic order. I don't know. I've tried to understand why. So it's not so easy, and it should be easier to access them. So yeah, I have 4 COBOL. So I will start to look at the JCL itself. So I have a JCL, which is called iIndex JCL. This time is a little more complicated because I have 4 programs. So I copy 4 source programs. We look at some of them. I compile them. So you recognize what you've seen before. And then I use IDCAMS, IDCAMS, obviously, to handle a vSAM file utility. So I delete a vSAM file, I create the vSAM file with its primary index. When I say IDCAMS does, and define an alternate key, and then I run the different programs. The first program will load the vSAM file with 10,000 record. And then, well, I've commented this one. Then there is a reading of all these files, primary key. And then the last one is an interesting one, which is an update. So it takes all component is updated and recreate or update 10,000 records. So when I run this JCL, so now I don't have to go to ISPF. I'm sorry, I'm French, so all the comment is in French, all the guidelines. So soumettre means submit. So I submit this JCL. It said that I can localize the result of the work here. And instead of going to ISPF, I can go to ISPF. In fact, yeah, well, that's interesting because you'll see that even this way, of course, we still are looking at the same thing. So the iIndex is here. and I can look at the result. So there are more steps, the copy steps, the compilation steps, and the execution steps. And if I come back here, I can display all the sysout in once, and I can also decompose the various components of the sysout, such as, these are the copy, the compilation, no errors, and the sysprint, which is generated by IDCAMS, and even the execution of the program itself with its program. So it's not finished. So I have to refresh. It's a little more soliciting. Or I go straight to the here. Okay, so it's finished here. So it should be finished here, the same also. But sometimes you have to refresh the screen. That's why you can't see it so easy. So sometimes I prefer personally to look at the result like this. Is more, it's wider. There are some interest. So here the full list, I believe the update is here, and the result of the update is here with the time which has been done for read, write, and total time for execution. Now I'm going to see what happens. We have created a VZAM file, but you cannot visualize VZAM file under with a normal editor or whatsoever. And in fact, unfortunately, maybe that will be a new capability. You cannot visualize VZAM file directly from the IBM Explorer. So I'll do it from here. And there is this F utility. So I go to the standard menu. Okay, which is called the file manager. So from the file manager, I use the view command. And I've prepared, this is the VZAM file which has been created and updated. And so I just look at it and displays. Okay, it's not very interesting, but you can see that you have 10,000 elements here. It's not the RBA. Maybe I don't see all my screen personally. You should have the total of 10,000 somewhere. So we have, in this way, manipulated some VZAM components. And I will terminate the demonstrations by something which is really new and very limited. Well, everything is new. In fact, Marilyn has not insisted too much, but this is a preview of our product. So we are in a full development and enhancing it, I would say, every day. And this way, a lot of things are moving. And what I want to show you from this environment is how you can use isCOBOL to compile locally. And this way, this is under my workstation, Windows workstation. And instead of compiling under zOS, execute the object, which is a class, Java class file, generating by the compiler directly under zOS environment. So I go back to my environment, and I'm going to change the perspective. And I have another perspective here, isCOBOL. I'm not going to make you a demonstration of isCOBOL at all. This is not the purpose of this demonstration, and you've probably have seen it. So I use always my very simple program, but you could take more sophisticated. isCOBOL on the OS is exactly the same code. In fact, because it's Java, that's an advantage. The compiler, the runtime is exactly the same, whatever the environment, even on a mobile. So that's great. So I'm going to change this hello world. In fact, I will uncomment. No, it's commented, so I will just display that. So I change this message just to show you that we can handle it. Okay, you know, we are in a directly in the environment, so the error are detected and yeah, that's so. But this is not the purpose. So it's compiled, and I can execute it, in fact, locally on my Windows environment. So I execute my application. Where is it? I don't know where it is. I'm losing some of the windows. I have to reset the perspective, I believe. Okay. Oh, I was not in the file environment. Okay, so this is the execution of this hello program locally. What I'm going to do now is to take the class here, which has been compiled locally. So I copy it. I go back to the main environment, the main perspective of the Explorer. So I open this perspective back. Of course, this can be automated, and but it's just to show you the principle of compiling locally and executing on the mainframe. By the way, this we talk about price later on and cost. This can also lead to significant cost reduction. So I go to the Explorator document is done. As I showed you before, I go to the Unix environment, which is here. And I have a hello class, which was used before. So I delete this hello class. And I copy the one which is coming from isCOBOL local compilation. Okay. So now I have to execute it. So I go to the GCL, which is not in Unix, which is MVS GCL, which is hi hello. So sample GCL, hi hello, the same. Remember the GCL copy and compile. So I'm going to comment the copy and compile and only keep the execution. So I just comment this. This I have to put a comment. I don't compile. And I don't have this Java, this environment. So what I do only is to run the program, which is already in the Unix environment. So I can submit this program, this GCL, and look at the execution. Well, I will not go to the detail, it's just one execution. And the message is a new message coming from the object code. Okay, this is what I wanted to show that the product exists. The product is still in continuous development. And the objective, I hope you have checked it, is that We don't want to change the habits of mainframe developers, but at the same time, we want them to leverage on all the advantage of isCOBOL, including the IDE. We did not show you, of course, the debugging and all these type of things. So I'll pass the control to Marine now.
Very good. Thank you, Bernard. All right. So now that we've looked at the demonstration and talked about how it's done, let's talk about why. Why would we do, why should you do this? Well, with isCOBOL for zOS, we find it more useful to focus on cost optimizations rather than cost reductions. But there are quite a few cost optimizations. There's just some of them listed here. Remember, isCOBOL complements rather than replaces IBM Enterprise COBOL. IBM Enterprise COBOL and isCOBOL each have their strengths. We are not attempting to beat Enterprise COBOL's performance, for instance. Instead, we're focusing on improving our compilation and execution performance in every version. And let me give you an example of that. We give you the ability to compile several independent COBOL source files in one compilation step by using a wildcard, star.cbl, for instance. This means that the JVM, the Java virtual machine, is only loaded once, not repeatedly for each source file. That's what Enterprise COBOL does. Enterprise COBOL can only compile more than one source code if all the source code is combined in a single file. The COBOL workload distribution is a cost optimization. isCOBOL can enable you to increase the workload to existing applications and not significantly change your cost. Now, one way your workload might increase is because of a merger or acquisition. Another is a pandemic. You can rewrite your non-COBOL programs to COBOL. So organizations transforming their non-COBOL code, for instance, assembler or PL1 programs, to COBOL, can move to isCOBOL, and that moves the workload off of the zOS. And by the way, we have tools that can help you with that transformation. And of course, using Java, moving to isCOBOL means you can natively or easily combine Java and COBOL developments together. Now, all of these optimizations are possible using the zip. And I know I've mentioned zip before. Let's talk about that. Zip stands for System Z Integrated Information Processor. It's a special purpose processor. It runs independently of the general processor. Now, running on the zip doesn't affect the MSU, and it doesn't count toward overall MIPS. The CPU usage isn't chargeable. The machine model designation doesn't change. There are no software charges. And the zip always runs at 100% of its capacity. IBM has rules about what can and can't be run on a zip, and because of Java, isCOBOL is eligible to run on the zip, while Enterprise COBOL is not. Deciding where and how to use isCOBOL on the zOS is best done on a case-by-case basis. Each organization is so different. But in general, we found that you can concentrate on your batch COBOL processes first. This is like the demos that Bernard just showed us. Batch processing is ideal for the zip. Often, your nightly batch processing is what is raising your MLC. Your MSU consumption needs to be reviewed to analyze where and how your COBOL workloads are handled. This can be done with various IBM and third-party tools available. The IBM software prices are generally established by IBM under the R4HA, which stands for Rolling 4-Hour Average model. If your batch processes are the highest 4 hours, then moving them to the zip makes sense. I want to stress that the analysis of your system should be done by the various experts available. And it can be some or all of these that are listed in the slide, and you see that Veryant is definitely one of those. So to summarize, wherever Linux or Unix is, isCOBOL can run because isCOBOL compiles to a Java class, and Java runs in Linux and Unix. By redistributing your workload and using isCOBOL on the zOS in zip areas, You can increase your processing power without increasing your costs. You'll also get the benefits of working with isCOBOL's extensive product line, including an IDE, a graphical debugger, and many utilities. You can expand your applications with either Java or COBOL programs and modernize your UI as well as moving it to the web. If you're interested in the next step or have questions, you can contact us at info@veryant.com. So before we go to questions, I want to point out we have one more webinar in the series. That's next Wednesday. Massimo Bertoli, the CTO and president of Veryant, will be covering some advanced programming features, covering APIs, things like that. If you want to view the previous webinars in this series, you can go to the web page that's on the slide. Again, it's in the links document that's in the handout. So please go to your links document, your handouts. And then that's it. I think we'll take some questions. Looks like we have.
Marlene.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm looking at the question during your presentation. So I have this question. Is COBOL only for batch?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting question. It's not only for batch. isCOBOL can run with CICS, with IMSDC, with any type of application. The thing is that the main advantage of isCOBOL is to be able to run on a zip for cost reduction. So if you and this because Java is eligible to the zip, DB2 is eligible to the zip. But CICS, for instance, which is a major transaction monitor, is not eligible to the zip. That means that if you use isCOBOL with CICS, for instance, there will be a lot of going back and forth between the general processor and the zip processor. So each case has been to be looked individually, but it's not sure that what you will gain, you will not lose by all this exchange. The other reason, and this is a more cost-related reason, or both are in fact, is that because of the pricing of IBM with 4 running hours, we concentrate on the heavy batch, for example, on the night, where there is more usage. Okay, it depends because some of the shops, the mainframe shops, have more batch than interactive or reciprocally. But generally, batch consume a lot. And you mentioned pandemic or things like that. This is purely batch. It will not really increase the transactional throughput. So the question is to make simple. We, at this stage, concentrate on batch. I hope it satisfies the question. I have a second question.
Yes.
Does isCOBOL run on zVSE? Okay, the answer is unfortunately no. Just for the people who don't know zVSE, zVSE is one of the operating systems which run on IBM Z, like zOS, but it's not very. There are less and less zVSE. And why does it not work? Simply because zVSE has not this unique environment with Java. So if there is no Java, there is no isCOBOL. Wherever there is Java, there is isCOBOL.
Great.
You have some?
We have a few other questions, but we have definitely gone over time.
Oh, yes. Yeah. We are almost 10 minutes.
Yes. So, and I know everybody's time is precious here, so we're going to answer those questions offline.
Yes.
And if you have any that you didn't think of, remember, you can always email us. There's lots of email addresses. I have one up there, a couple up there, info@veryant.com and emea@veryant.com. And thank you everyone for attending. And we hope to see you at the last webinar next week. All right. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye, everyone.